for coming today to our monthly ATI coaching corner. We do this every month on the third Thursday. Today we are joined by Coach Geoff Berman for simple secrets to great phone skills. So take it away, Geoff, and thank you.
Thank you, Maddie, and thank you to the independent garage owners of North Carolina for giving me this opportunity. I've never spoke to you guys before, and that kind of sucks because I was born in North Carolina, so I feel like I'm kind of home. So anyway, I hope you guys are all ready to learn about phone skills. I know we only have an hour. There's way more to phone skills than what I'm going to share with you today, and we are going to do it on somewhat of a speed mode because there is a lot to cram in. So if any of you are looking for more information after this, please feel free to contact me here at ATI, and I'll be happy to help you with that. All right, that being said, let's get started. So what are we going to learn today? Well, several things. The two most important goals when answering the phone. And I say two, and you'll see in a moment that there is actually one goal that you think is a goal, but really is not. We'll share what that is. 4 things that should accompany every successful phone. What the customer really wants to know. They call and ask for a price is not necessarily what they really want to know. There's 4 magic words. You're going to learn what those are and how they will help you with every phone call. The 8 important components of a great sales call. So we're going to be talking about, in some hybrid format, both the sales call as well as the incoming customer call, and what most don't do or don't do well, and how to put all these things together and make them work. So I think if we get that done in 60 minutes, we did pretty good. All right, so what are the 2 most important goals when answering the phone? So I'd like to ask the group, we got a bunch of people here, let's do a little interaction here. What do you think would be the most important things to remember, the goals to be when you answer the phone? Anybody? Tony, you trying to unmute, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. How about build some rapport?
Rapport. Okay, good. That is one of the 2. Absolutely, rapport. What's the other one?
Set the appointment.
Maybe. Maybe. Anything else we can think of? It doesn't have to be just Tony.
I'm having some audio problems. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine, yeah.
Okay.
Julia put in the chat, happy tone in your voice.
Happy tone in your voice, good. That helps build rapport. Anything else you see in the chat? Let's see, I can open the chat. Here we go. Gaining trust. Yep, I see that, good.
Control.
Anybody else? What is it, Tony?
Oh, I said control, maintain control.
You demand. Control and rapport. Those are the 2 most important things. So let's take a look. First is gain and keep control. Well, and the other is to build rapport. So what does control look like? Our typical greeting, and it may not be exactly like this, but typically it's something like, thank you for calling whatever shop, Unique Automotive. How can I help you? Might mention your name. How can I help you? Right? Most people, and I would think most of you on the call, would probably answer the phone very similar to that. The question is, does that gain control and does that build rapport? Right? So the first question in there I would say, let's talk about control. Does it gain control or does it give it away? What do you guys think? Does it gain control or does it give it away?
Gives it away.
How does it give it away, Tony?
You ask them, how can I help you?
What's their response going to be?
What it is that they want.
Yeah.
What they think they want.
So they're probably going to ask you another question.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And their question might be, how much for? And when they ask that question, who's in control now?
They're still in control.
They took control. You gave it away, right? Because you said, how can I help you? The how can I help you question gives control away. It is probably one of the worst things you can say when answering the phone. Yet somehow it's unusual that I say that because everybody asks that question. Any business you call, how often do you hear, how can I help you? It's prevalent. It's everywhere. But in terms of trying to gain control, it's one of the worst things that we can ask. All right, does it build rapport? Again, thank you for calling Unique Automotive. How can I help you? Does it build rapport, yes or no?
To a degree.
Okay, you're right, to a degree, but I would still say no. And the reason I would say no is because it was pleasant, it was nice, but is it doing anything to help you go beyond pleasant and nice? Anyone can be pleasant and nice, right? So we want to take ourselves away from this and ask ourselves a couple of different questions to help figure this out. Is there anything about this greeting that stands out? Obviously, no. There's nothing about this that stands out. It's a standard greeting. Everybody uses it all the time. And is it really any different from anyone else? No. So why is it so common? Because it's simple, it's polite, and it's easy. And we've always done it, but that doesn't make it right. The status quo is going to get us nowhere. We got to jump outside of that, and we got to say, okay, the first impression matters. This is it. What am I going to do to make that first impression count? The greeting that we see here, when we say, how can I help you? A better way to say this, all of this, might be, so here's the consider. Thank you for calling Unique Automotive. My name is Jeff. Who do I have the pleasure of speaking with today? Now, again, the question is, does this gain control or give it away?
I think it gives you control because you're asking them their name.
I'm asking them a closed-ended question that only has one answer. They're not going to respond with another question. They're going to respond with the answer to mine, which gives me control. Yes, it gains control. Does it build rapport? Yes or no?
Yes.
Because of what you just said, right? I now am getting their name. And when I get their name, I can then repeat it and use it throughout the conversation. So I have asked a question that gives me the ability to get control and further build rapport. I hope everybody understands that, although at this point, I don't know if anyone's there except you, Tony. But go ahead.
I got a quick question. Is it proper grammar to say who, or would it be whom?
I don't know, honestly. I'm not really good at grammar, but
this is
whom sounds a little odd to me, but it might be proper grammar. Usually proper grammar does sound odd. So, but I don't want you to get wrapped up in that part of it because, and we'll talk about this in just a moment, but since you asked, I'll mention it now. Scripting is crucial, and we want to script things because we want people to have the ability to, they understand it's clear, right? And there's a tool, and it's easy to move forward. It's not just, hey, be nice when you answer the phone. There's more to it than that. So we give them some scripting. And in that scripting, we say, saying thank you, mentioning the company name, using your name, and then asking for their name. That's really what we're trying to do in that sentence, or that there's two sentences. But when I ask for their name, who do I have the pleasure of speaking with, doesn't feel right, because some of you listening might go, that just feels a little uncomfortable. That's fine. Ask the name a different way, right? Can I ask who's calling, please? That might feel better. I don't care. Just don't do something that's rude and nasty, like, hey, dude, what's your name? That doesn't work, right? So we have to ask for the name. Just figure out a way to do it in a comfortable way and be flexible with the script as long as they ask for the name. Does that make sense, Tony?
Yeah, Jeff, I want to tell you, I wouldn't change a thing in that. I would not. If anybody else is listening, we get complimented all the time because this is exactly what we say, except we may use whom instead of who.
Well, unless you get an English teacher on the line, I don't think it's going to matter.
Yeah, it may not matter, but I'm just saying people compliment us all the time. That was, so I would, if you're listening, I would just leave it alone.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Tony. Much appreciated. All right. So if nobody else has questions, we'll keep going. So there's a third thing. I said there's one thing that you think is a goal that is not, and that's what Tony mentioned before, which is getting the appointment. Now, I know the ultimate goal is to always get the car in. All right. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm telling you you shouldn't just be focused on getting the car. You should. But I want you to change the way you look at this, because getting an appointment really should not be the goal. It is absolutely 100% important, but it shouldn't be the goal. It should be your reward, not the goal. Meaning that if I did a good job with control and rapport, they're going to give me the keys. It's your reward. If I go after the appointment, I'm going to fail. But if I go after control and rapport, I'll get the appointment. Does that make sense to everyone? I hope. It's just a play in your mind. It's a Jedi mind trick to make us think a little differently about our approach and what really matters. And we should be measuring that as a reward and seeing how many times we get rewarded when we do it right. By doing that, we'll do it right more often. All right. 4 things that should accompany every successful phone. First one is a mirror. Now, a mirror is important because I'm sure you've all heard that you can hear a smile over the phone, you know, fake it till you make it, and all those things. And those are true, because if I answer the phone with a pouty face, it's going to come across sounding like I have a frowny face, or if I'm tired or whatever. So I need to take a moment. And let's face it, we're busy all day. I mean, there's stuff happening 100 different ways and coming at us in a million directions. And, you know, there are moments where it's like, I don't want to do this right now. I wish the phone would stop ringing. I get it. But the customer doesn't know that, and it's not their fault. And we spend a lot of money to get that phone to ring. So we have to do the right things every time. It's too crucial. It's the window into your business. And I'm actually in the middle of teaching the marketing class today. And one of the things I just told them was, you lose more money over the phone than anywhere else in your business. We have to take this seriously. So by putting a mirror up there, it gives us a moment to just stop, smile, take a deep breath, and let all of that pressure that's happening at that moment just subside so that we can answer the phone. And instead of saying, yeah, Berman's Automotive, Geoff here, because we're rushed, we would say, thank you for calling Berman's Automotive. My name is Geoff. Who do I have the pleasure of speaking with today? You can't do that if you don't take that extra second. And no matter how busy you are, that extra second is not going to take away from anything that's going on that day. So a mirror is crucial to making that happen. The other thing is a script, which we just briefly talked about. We have to have a script. But again, I want you to be careful. Scripts are not designed to be written exactly the way they are written. Now, some companies out there don't believe that, and you've probably heard them say, oh, this is what they say. I have a problem with that, because I want the human to own it. I want them to feel good about what they're saying and not feel forced, because if they feel forced, they're going to sound like robots. We've all been on phone calls where we've called other businesses, and we could tell they're reading a script, and it sounds that way. It's not personal, it's not connecting, and it typically is not very successful. So what we do is we give them a script as a guide. We make sure they understand the importance of the things that are in there, and we give them some latitude to play with it. Then we listen to phone calls. We have discussions about phone calls. We have training around phone calls, and we work on improving how it sounds so that everyone can own it and find the ways to make it work. And there isn't one perfect way to say anything, but we do need to say certain things. We need to say thank you. We need to identify ourselves. We need to ask for their name. We need to say certain things. How we do it is going to be up to them as long as it fits the criteria. Then we have the appointment book. Now, I know that most of us probably don't have a book anymore. It's on the computer, but we do have some way of documenting appointments. We have to, because if we don't document the appointments, people show up, we don't know they're coming in, and now it's like, oh, I didn't have you on the appointment book, and that's already a disconnect. What I will tell you, in terms of phone, many of you have probably made appointments and people don't show. And part of that's because when we make the appointment, we don't get enough information. We say, yeah, tomorrow at 8 o'clock's fine. Okay, I'll see you then. And we don't find out more than their first name. I want their cell phone number. I want their address. I want the kind of car they have. I want to get as much information as I can. for two reasons. One is it allows me to spend more time at the counter with them when they drop off to further build rapport and not get all this basic information. But more importantly, if I'm willing to give you all that, the likelihood of me showing up is much greater. If I'm just saying that to get off the phone, you'll find out when you start asking that information. Everybody got that? Just nod your heads and I can't see you. Okay. All right. And the last one is a phone log. Now, a phone log is something most people don't do. But a phone log is crucial. And the reason it's crucial is because we spend all this money to advertise or whatever we do to get people in the door. But the reality is that that's not what those things are really designed to do. What they're designed to do is get the phone to ring. Now, I know some people still, they go online, they book an appointment that way, or they send an email. But the bulk of what's happening from the outside world with new business is coming in from the phone still, and probably always will, at least in our lifetime. So if we understand that the incoming phone call for a new customer is because of money that I spent on advertising, and we don't measure that, the only thing we have to measure is how many people showed up from whatever it is that we put out there, the Val Pack, if you use that, or the mailer, the neighborhood mailer through whatever company you might use, or whatever postcard you sent out in whatever way you sent it, or the TV ad or the radio ad or whatever it is. We're measuring that and seeing what's coming in. All we can judge it by is what's in our database. That's how many made it through the phone. But how many actually called? We don't have that data unless we have a phone log. And that's really important because we make our marketing decisions based on what ended up in our database, not based on how many phone calls happened. I hope everybody understands that. That's crucial. Now, in addition to that, we also get to look down this phone log. I know it's hard to see here, but if you look down this left-hand side, you can see that whether there was an appointment made and what the appointment date and time is, and then whether it's a new customer or not. So if we go down and we see, the ad, because that's what's in here, and we see appointment, no, new customer, yes, that starts to give us a sense of what's really happening here. And we're looking at these logs every single day, which allows us to have conversations with people to help find out what's going on, listen to those phone calls, improve the situation, and get more yeses. I hope everybody understands that. That is very, very, very crucial. All right, any questions from anyone before we move on? Okay, next slide. All right, the unasked questions. So very often a customer will call, and again, we're only talking about the new caller right now. New customer calls in and says, how much for? That's probably the most popular question and the most difficult question to answer. If they ask you what time you're open, you don't need my help with that. They ask you what kind of car you work on, or do you work on this type of model? You don't need my help with that. Where you need help is the customer that calls in and says, how much? That's where we tend to fail the most. And the reason we fail there is because immediately when somebody says how much, our brain goes down the price shopper route, and we already start to disconnect from the caller because we believe because they ask for a price, they're a price shopper. And nothing could be further from the truth. How many times have you guys called a business and asked for a price? Are you a price shopper? I doubt it. You need your lawn mowed. You call up a landscaper. How much? You need trees pruned. How much? You need a roof done. How much? You need a driveway sealed. How much? You need firewood. How much? That's the question we tend to ask. It doesn't mean we're looking for the cheapest price. It just means we don't know what else to ask. Because the truth is, when they come in, because they're all probably going to tell you the same thing, well, you need a roof. How big is your roof? Is the wood rotten? What kind of shingles do you want? Right? And you're going to be in a position where you're going to, I don't know. So they're going to come out and inspect your roof, and they're going to give you prices. And the truth is, you probably don't go with the lowest price. You go with the one you're most comfortable with. You go with the one you trust, and you go with the one that you think gave you a fair price. That's more likely what's going to happen. And as a result, if you understand what I'm about to tell you, the price question is really just because I don't know what else to ask. So if I ask this question, can I trust you? Your response is going to be, of course you can. So how do I believe that? You have to say that, because if you didn't say yes, I'd hang up the phone, right? So in this conversation, I got to feel I can trust you. And if your brain goes to price shopper, they're not going to feel that. Control and rapport gives you the reward of getting the appointment. If that rapport isn't there, it won't happen. And if our brain thinks they're a price shopper, there won't be rapport. So we have to be focused on those unasked questions. Can I trust you? Will it be done when promised? Will it be done right the first time? Will I be treated fairly and with respect? Will I be taken advantage of? Will I pay a fair price? These are the things, and there's probably 100 more questions that you could write down that people have in the back of their minds that you really need to answer. It isn't about the price, which is why we tell you not to quote a price. Because if that's all we're doing, we're going to be comparing price to price to price, then I probably will go to the cheapest price because there is no other reason for me to choose. There's nothing compelling happening on these phone calls that would make me want to choose someone else. All right. Any questions about that? All right. The 4 magic words. Now, if you remember this, you will have done a tremendous amount to build rapport. So if you want to just say to me, take one thing out of this that really is going to help with rapport, it's this. First one is, thank you. Saying the word thank you can be used in any situation and anytime you open your mouth. It doesn't matter what the caller said. You can always respond by saying thank you. They're calling, they're upset. You fixed my car wrong and it's not still broken and that squeak is still happening. And, well, thank you for letting me know that before you launch into whatever you're going to say, right? You know, maybe it's like, hey, I saw you on Google and, you know, your reviews are great. Well, thank you for, you can always respond by opening with thank you. And by opening with thank you, you're moving more and more closer to rapport, especially when someone's upset with us. So here's an example. Thank you, Susan, for asking that question. There are many ways we can help you with. So, you know, how much for? Thank you for asking that question, right? We always can respond with a thank you. The next one is empathy. Now, don't confuse sympathy with empathy. They are very different. Empathy is showing that I understand. Sympathy is just, I feel bad for you. Empathy is showing that I understand. I've been there. I've walked in your shoes. I feel your pain. And if we can get that to come across, we're going to connect. So here's an example. Oh my gosh, Melissa, that sounds horrible. I can only imagine how you must have felt. When? Right? When you experienced that you spent $600 with us and the car still isn't fixed, right? That's how you might want to open the call. Or when you felt your car went off into that ditch or whatever the case may be, right? We want to try to use empathy, and when appropriate, we use it. Next one, apologize. You know, and sometimes apologies are, you know, you feel like it doesn't necessarily fit, but you're not necessarily apologizing for anything you personally did or your shop did. Maybe you're just apologizing because it happened in general. Apologies can work in that way as well. So here's an example. I'm so sorry you had that experience. Let me see what I can do to help you with this, Kevin. Also notice every single time I'm using the caller's name. Use it throughout the conversation. You can always use their name. The more you use it, the better. And then the last one is agree. And this is one that we really should use a lot more. Well, I can get that price, I can get that cheaper somewhere else. And then instead of responding with something agreeing with it, what we tend to do is try to defend ourselves. Well, you know, we do this and we do this, and well, you know, it's not going to be that. And, you know, instead of just agreeing with them. So it might be something like this. You can absolutely get that less somewhere else, Amy. Start that way. Isn't it true? Most of our customers have found our service to be a better value because, and then we go into all the things that we need to, right? But because we're in a rush all the time, we tend to just, oh my God, this person's taking my time and the price shopper anyway. And that's how it comes out. We got to take that time to breathe, smile, follow a process, really listen. And if we can remember these 4 words, any interaction we're having, you can always open with what comes out of your mouth next with at least one of these options. Sometimes multiple. We can go to thank you, then empathy, right? Sometimes we can agree or thank them and then agree. I mean, there's lots of ways to do this. Just remember those 4 words. And if you can do that, you will do a lot to build rapport. All right. Any questions about that? Nobody wants to talk. Looks like I'm on my own. Okay. All right. The 8 important components of a great sales call. So, first one, you must be sold first. So if the technician has written something down and you did a courtesy inspection, or he did a courtesy inspection, you turned it into an estimate. If you're going to get on the customer or the phone and call the customer and try to sell it, if you don't feel right about that, if there's something that you're not sure about, especially if we're new and still learning, maybe, a lot of us, if you're smart, are hiring people from outside of the industry and we're teaching them to be service writers. That's the best way to go, okay? Because they don't have any old habits, bad habits, and we can teach them the cars. We can't teach them to be salespeople. So promoting a mechanic to be a salesperson usually is a bad idea. Not always, but usually is a bad idea. So if we have people that are at the counter trying to sell stuff and they're not comfortable, we need to be sold first. If I get sold by you or the tech on why this is important and the light bulb goes off, I'm going to do a better job selling it to the customer. If I don't believe it, it's going to come across. So I have to be sold first. Next thing we want to do is prepare by having our estimate in piles, right? 3 piles. First pile is going to be the big pile. Big pile is everything, right? I came in because my car wouldn't start. You found out what that was. You wrote up the diag and the starter, and there it is. In addition to that, we did a courtesy inspection, needs tire rotation, and needs this, 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 and we're at $1,200. So the big pile is $1,200, not $650, $250, $350 equals $600. The big pile, equals $1,200. The big pile is $1,200. So we went through all the things and we gave them a price. Pile 2 is, wow, that's a lot of money. I don't have that much. I didn't budget for it. What can we do to bring the price down? We don't just discount it. We peel off the piles. So we have the second pile where it has something removed that can be put off if need be and try to sell it again at that lower numbers. Now it's $950 instead of $1,200 because we peeled off that transmission service, let's say. And then the last pile would be the original request. And I would tell you the better way to go might even be 4 piles where you have the original request plus one thing. And then if you have to, you can still peel back to the original request. All right. Then we have being an active listener. It is so important to pay attention. And I know how hard it is because we're doing a million things, but if we're thinking about, I got to get this ticket written and I got this customer in front of me and I got this parts order I still need to place and all this is happening, we're not really listening to the customer. We have to slow down and be an active listener. The more we do that, the more we can understand what's going on. We don't interrupt them because we're in a hurry. We take the time to really listen. And when we do, we can respond with empathy. We can respond with intelligent things to say to get them to see why we're better. We can think about what those unanswered questions are and really be hearing them in their explanation and be able to respond to those things as opposed to the direct question they asked before, which was a price. Then we want to repeat back what we hear. It's very, very important to, as much as you can, parrot what was said. And the more you do that, the more they're going to feel like they're being heard, that you're paying attention, that you pay attention to every detail. And the truth is that while it doesn't seem that important maybe, it says a lot to how we're going to actually fix their car. If you pay attention to that many details in talking to me and having a conversation, you're going to do a good job fixing my car. Remember the unasked questions, right? Are you going to fix it right the first time? This will help go there because you are clearly paying attention. So here might be a good example. Deborah, it sounds like your top 3 concerns about the service are yada, yada, yada. Does that sound accurate to you? So now I'm including them in by asking them if I got it right. I'm parroting back to them what they said. And everyone's on the same page and they're feeling really good about how it's going. And by the way, again, I used the caller's name. Always, always, always. All right, validate the concerns. after you confirm what they understand and you get their point of view, all right, you want to continue building trust by empathizing with them and validating how they feel. Here might be an example. I understand spending $900 sounds like a lot of money. Thankfully, Dave, this service actually pays for itself by. So not just justifying it, starting off with something that gets the brain in the right place to help justify it. Validate their concerns. Yes, it is a lot of money. Agree with them. Validate those concerns. All right. And again, you can read that. I basically said that already. All right. Follow-up questions. You want to make sure they understand there's going to be some follow-up. Now, this follow-up could be later. In the day, if the car's in the shop, we're going to make some follow-up questions. It could be a follow-up on something that they didn't buy, and you're going to say, look, in the next 30 days, I want to follow up with you. And you want to verify. You want them to know. This shouldn't be a secret or a surprise. Let them know, because what this says to them is, this is important. And then make sure you do follow up. Because if you tell them you're going to and you don't, that's even worse, right? These things you're asking them to buy are important. They need to feel they're important. All right. Thank you, Jim. Can you explain to me why you feel this service is not necessary? So they might say to you, I've never serviced a transmission in any of the cars that I've ever had. So a question like that might, instead of just going into, well, here's why, maybe ask them to tell you why that's not a good idea. And if you hear what they're saying, right? If you hear that they're saying, I had a car that went 200,000 miles and never did it, you might say, well, that's interesting. What kind of car was it? How long ago was it? Right? And you'll start to be able to get more information to be able to actually help them see why it might have happened with that car and why it's different here. But if you don't ask those questions, you're assuming too much, and it typically doesn't work out. All right, tell a relatable story. Now, in sales, what we as an industry tend to do is we tend to focus way too much on the facts. And that's mostly because we're car people, so we talk about cars, which is why having someone who's not a car person at the counter is usually better. It's good salespeople use stories. Stories sell because stories connect me to the product. So for example, a story might be something like this. I might say to the caller, in this case, I'll say Tony. I'll just use your name because it's the only one I can see. So Tony, hey, have you ever sprayed a Windex bottle, and when you do, instead of it spraying nice and smooth and even, it just kind of dripped down your hand? Does that ever happen to you?
Just the other day.
Wow. Well, that's cool. And I will say to you guys, if it hasn't happened to you, you visualize it, you get it. There's nothing surprising here, right? So Tony says, yeah, it just happened to me the other day. Well, that's interesting, Tony, because that's exactly what's happening with your fuel injector. It's supposed to spray nice and smooth and even, but because it's clogged, it's dripping down into the cylinder, which is why we need to do the service and possibly have to replace the fuel injector. It's causing you poor performance and fuel economy issues. So when you say it like that, when you add that Windex part of the story to it, it makes the connection in the customer's mind. Oh, I can visualize that. You literally put a photograph in their mind, and they said, oh yeah, oh, it's not spraying, it's dripping. I could see where that would not cause me, or that would cause me fuel issues or performance issues. Yeah, okay, I see why we need to do that now. But instead, what do? Well, the carbon buildup, and the tech says, and the miles are, and we focus too much on the facts. Facts don't sell. Stories sell. So the more we can relate those things, the better. Let them know we're going to follow up, right? They just need to know. We need to make sure they know. And understand, so here's an example. I understand you need some time to consider your options, William. I'll check back with you in 30 days to answer any further questions you may have. What day of the week is best for you? So again, we're including them and giving them choices. All right. Now we're doing good with time. So, yeah.
Quick question, and I know this may sound ignorant based on everything you just said, but a lot of the, and I know we're talking about a first-time call, right? But the
sales part could be anything.
Okay.
because it's
Well-
a fail call. But the first part, yes, first time call.
So I'm seeing with the texting becoming more of a communication tool where people are just texting the cost of the estimate to the customer rather than doing everything you just talked about.
Okay, so if you have a regular customer who you have a good rapport with, who you know trusts you implicably and just needs a price, yeah, I could see that happening.
Okay.
But if you don't have any of that rapport built, you need to work there. Now, if the customer says my preferred method, because we should be asking that too, my preferred method of communication is what, right? Well, I'd rather you text me. And okay, well, when we actually have the digital inspection done, we'll be happy to send that to you via text. And then, you take a minute and look at it, and I'll give you a call, 15, 20 minutes later to go over it with you. That we need to discuss, right? So that we set a clear expectation to make sure that we're going about it in the right direction, because you don't want anyone to see a price and just say no and be done and show up an hour later and pick up their car, because that happens too.
Yeah.
So I would make sure until you feel that the relationship is on some solid ground, that I don't do anything with sales through text.
Thank
Does that
you.
make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right. Good question, though. All right. Any other questions from anyone else? I just don't know if anyone's there. That's the weird part. All right. It could just be you and I. All right. So here's kind of how we put all this together. All right. So I went through this pretty quickly, but we do have some extra time, so maybe we can talk about it. So first thing you want to do is make sure you come prepared. What does come prepared mean? It means I have a mirror and I can breathe. It means I have a script and I've practiced it, right? It means that I have a phone log and it's in front of me. It means that I am asking their name. And because of that, I'm writing it down on the phone log and I am repeating it often. It means that I'm thinking about those unanswered questions. It means I'm ignoring everything else that's going on around me. Being prepared is so crucial, because where you finish has a lot to do with where you start. And I'm going to give you a great example, because everyone on this call is from North Carolina. And let's face it, North Carolina is race car world, right? So let's talk about NASCAR for just a moment. And forgive me, folks, because I am not a true NASCAR fan, so I may get this wrong. If I do, I apologize, but you'll get the gist of what I'm saying and how it applies here. So in order to be in the race, you first have to do a qualifying lap. Now, the qualifying lap is what decides what position you are in the race before the race starts. I believe there's 43 cars. This is where I get foggy. Tony, how many is it? 43 in the race? Okay. You're not a true North Carolinian then, are you?
I'm a South Carolinian.
All right. Transplant, are you? Just went up north there. Okay. So I think it's 43. Let's just go with that. So there's 43 cars in the race. Now, if you're up front in pole position, is that a guarantee we're going to win the race? Of course not. If you're in the back, 43rd position, is that a guarantee you're going to lose the race? No. I mean, let's face it. Everyone could crash and burn except that last car. You win. All right. You could be really good and get halfway up and the rest crash and burn. Okay. No question. But the likelihood of you winning from the back is probably a lot less. And the likelihood of you winning from the front is probably much greater. Would we all agree with that? So here's the thing. If you look at the point standing in NASCAR, you probably will find those that are towards the top are the ones that start more towards the top. You're not going to see, point standings of people who start in the back always ending up in the point standings in any type of competitive way. Where you finish has a lot to do with where you start. It is not a guarantee. You can still crash and burn throughout your day or on this phone call, for example. But if you start stronger, you will end stronger more often. I hope that makes sense. And the NASCAR analogy should be a good one for all of you. All right. Then we want to make sure we practice. This is a craft, folks. This is something that we can't just give them a script and say, hey, be nice and here, look in the mirror and be done with it. There has to be some level of practice that's happening training often. We should be listening to calls. We should be role playing with each other. We should be, making it really difficult in a role play for them to be successful. The harder we do things in practice, the more difficult practice is, easier it's going to be when we're actually playing the game. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
But we don't do that. What do? We half-ass our way in, like I just said. Oh, we don't have the time. It's too hard. You don't have the time not to. You lose more money on the phone than anywhere else in your business. All right. And then the last thing is, if you're not, you have got to start recording calls. And we have to record calls and use them in our training. We have to listen to them. We have to require that other people listen to them. If you have multiple people on the phone, you listen to each other and you look at what they do well and what they need to improve, and you let them help each other. And you don't just listen to the call and say, how was it? You listen to it 5-10 seconds and you stop and talk. You listen to it 10 seconds, you stop and talk. And you really work through this. And you need to learn to understand what good looks like. You can't know what good looks like if you don't beat it up and try to figure it out. All right. And so all of that, in closing, we'll just review real quick. We want to make sure that we're focusing on building control and rapport on that initial phone call, and that we know that the appointment is not the goal, it's the reward. Every phone needs to have a mirror, a script, and some way of making an appointment, and a phone log for the reasons we've already talked about. We should focus on answering the unasked questions, not the obvious one. Just because I asked a price does not make me a price shopper. Always remember the 4 magic words: thank you, empathize, apologize, and agree. And again, if those are the only things we can remember, that will absolutely help us build rapport. Follow the 8 components of the great sales call: being sold first, being prepared by having those 3 piles, active listening, repeating what they've said, validate their concerns, ask follow-up questions, tell relatable stories, and tell them you're going to follow up. And then most importantly, and above all, come prepared, practice often, record and listen to your calls. And that brings this to a close. So if there is a question and answer, look at that, exactly 45 minutes. If there's a question and answer session, this would be it. So does anybody have anything they want to ask, either related to what I said or something unrelated to phone, or unrelated to this that's related to phone? I'd be happy to answer it.
I have a question, Geoff. When the recording of the call is analyzed, you mentioned listening to a portion, then talk about it and so forth. When you're listening to the call, because people that are,
what are you listening for? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, I'm just thinking, because we're in this business, do we become skewed in some way of what we could do better to do what you're talking about here and build that rapport even more? I mean, I'm just wondering if sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot because, we're blinded by the people on the other end of the phone's questions. We have a certain way we're going to answer it. You know what I mean? Kind of like what you were talking about with the service advisor, and how it's better to have someone that's you can train who has those other characteristics that don't have bad habits. I'm just wondering, because a lot of times I'll run stuff past my wife, and I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I'm trying to find something right now to answer your question. That's why that Word document popped up there. I have something that I think will help you. And I was going to dump it in the chat, but I'm having a hard time finding it. I didn't know we'd need this.
I record all our calls that are out, incoming calls, outgoing calls, and obviously we use Kukui, so they, any kind
you
of
got all your calls recorded then, yeah.
Yeah. So I just, I know what I would like to have, but at the same time, sometimes I wonder if I'm too critical or not critical enough in certain areas. I'm just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the simple answer, and I can't find this document off the top of my head, but let's say, for example, right, like we said with the greeting, we want them to say, thank you, mention the shop, mention themselves, and then ask for their name. So the first thing you want to listen for is that. So you listen to that and you stop, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys, did we touch on all the things we're supposed to? Whether it was good or bad, doesn't matter. Did we touch on the things we're supposed to? Well, no, yes, whatever. And maybe they have good reason, maybe they don't, right? Because they don't know what to necessarily listen for either. This is a learning experience in the beginning, right? So, the document I was going to show you was going to say that, did you answer the phone by the third ring? Did you use the proper greeting? Did you say thank you, right? That's the stuff that's on there. So if you have all that written on a document, then it's easy for all of us to be on the same page as we're listening to the call.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is that in Overdrive somewhere?
I don't know. If it's not, it should be.
Okay.
But it is part of the phone skills class that I teach.
Yeah. And you just revamped that, didn't you?
It's brand new. It's actually Tuesday is the very first class.
Yeah. I'm scheduled to be a part of that. I was just, maybe I'll see it then.
So what's going to happen in that, just since you asked, it's a 4-hour class that the first 4 hours is all about the incoming call. It's way more detail than we went into here. And then the second class is two parts to it, is all about the outgoing sales call. So it's what I did here was just kind of a brush over.
Yeah.
But what we're going to do in those two classes is dig in deep into the incoming and the outgoing sales call.
Okay. I'm sure that'll answer all my questions.
Are you signed up for it?
I'm pretty sure, yes.
Okay, good. Well, I'd love to see you there. It'd be great.
Yeah, it's the 25th.
It's Tuesday,
27th.
that's June 25th, I think is right. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I signed it up.
Cool.
Signed up for it.
How can other people sign up for it? Is there a link that we can put in the chat?
It's not. I don't know that I can send a link.
Okay.
It would be they would have to sign up through their Overdrive account if they're an ATI client.
Got
If
it.
is there anybody on here who's not an ATI client, they won't be able to sign up for that class unless they're a member. It's part of the program. So
Just
I'm
more
assuming
reason.
there's some people here that aren't ATI members. Is that true?
Yes, that is
Yeah.
true.
Just more
sorry,
reason to be an ATI member.
That's right.
Well said, Tony. All right, looks like we got some notes here. Had a last minute notification on class today. Do not have a laptop with video. Not okay. That's fine. Well, I'm glad you're listening. Hopefully, Lisa, if you want to type in anything, any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I'm glad that you like NASCAR. Oh, that's Julie. That's somebody else. Julie, I'm glad you like NASCAR. Okay. Is there any other questions? No?
Feel free to unmute yourself or type away in the chat.
I can't believe that I covered it that well.
You're a great teacher, Jeff. What are you talking about?
Well, thank you, Tony, but that was a lot in 1 hour, in 45 minutes. I'm sure there's questions. Come on, I was moving. Thank you, Lisa. Maddie, is this something we're going to do again? I mean, how often? You said monthly, but this is the first time I've been involved. So
Yeah, this is the first time you've been involved. I get a list from ATI of the rotating coaches. Next month will be a different coach. Previous month was a different coach. I think previous month was Charlene. And then I will have to take a look at our calendar to see what our next month is. But yep, it happens every month.
I'm asking that because maybe I don't know if you get requests for certain topics or whatever, but if anyone wants to maybe dig deeper into this, I could maybe come back at some point and, do, a deeper dive, or maybe if the people on this call want to practice some of it, and we can come back and talk about the results and maybe what we can do from there to make it better, that kind, because we're interactive here. So we Doesn't have to be a presentation necessarily, just be a learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody has any updates, feel free to send them my way. Geoff, is your contact information anywhere over here?
I think it was on the first slide. Let me see if I can go back to that. Let's see. That's too hard. Let's just gotta make it to the beginning first. Yes, here we go. Boom. All right. No, my email's not on there. Okay, so let me put it in the chat. That went through, right?
Yep, perfect. We have Geoff's email in the chat. If anybody has any questions or any follow-ups, feel free to reach out to me or reach out to Geoff. Thank you all again for coming today, and we look forward to possibly seeing you next month.